How do you communicate to your church if you don't have a communication team? What do you do if you're a solo pastor? We've got some answers for you. And I've got Julie Masson on the show. And you may or may not know who she is, but she is the world's preeminent communication expert for churches. Yes, you are, Julie. I see that head. You nod yes. Don't shake your head no. Julie, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sam. You're very kind.
So Julie, full disclosure, Julie worked for us early on at Church Answers, did an amazing job of putting together all of our systems, some of which we still use. And then she bailed on us for bigger and better things. I don't need you guys anymore. I'm tired of working for you. And now you're back in the space of church communication. We'll get to more of that here in just a second. But what she really specializes in she has a lot of specialties when it comes to communication, but what she really specializes in with churches is, hey, you may not think you can afford this or do this, but you can. So more on that here in just a moment, more with Julie in just a moment. Let me take you to our sponsor, Smart Church Solutions. You've been hearing about eSpace. This is something you need to go check out. If you have facility issues, which is like every church, they have solutions. They can also help schools and other nonprofits as well. Churches is something they do and something they specialize in. But really, anyone, if you're listening to this, eSpace is the leading facility management software built specifically for churches and nonprofits. Schedule events, manage work orders, track assets, automate things like HVAC and door access. Boy, we need that at my church. Maybe I should call Smart Church Solutions, and you should too. Trusted by over 1,250 organizations, including some of the largest churches in the country, but also they can help any church size. So I know you're tired of the spreadsheets and the sticky notes and the last minute maintenance emergencies. Go check out eSpace at smartchurchsolutions.com/Rainer, link in the show notes. All right, Julie, many pastors and church leaders face a lot of common challenges, which it centers on, how do I get this message out? We hear that all the time at Church Answers. How do I have an effective communication strategy? I don't have a big team around me. Give us some of your solutions.
Well, I don't know if you want to call it a solution, but my first tip would be don't feel like you have to do it all. So a lot of pastors will compare themselves to other churches and see, oh, that church has a really strong Instagram account, YouTube, like they're live streaming their sermons to YouTube. They've got a really strong Facebook account. They're on Twitter. And the first thing I would say is you don't have to be on them all. That's too much. And honestly, the way social media algorithms are working now, and they have been for a while, is you have to pay to play. So you're not going to be able to organically reach very many people on all of those platforms. So I would say pick one, maybe two. And furthermore, you don't have to be on Twitter. I would say churches, you can get off Twitter. You don't have to be there.
You're breaking my heart.
You can be there, but you don't prioritize it.
Let's talk about this for just a moment, because X, Twitter, whatever it's called now.
Sure.
So I was on it early on.
Back when it was really good.
Loved it. I love seeing that everyone was eating a burger for lunch. It's just back in the day, that's what you did. It was like, what's my friend up to? And you would just check their Twitter page, and it was absolutely fascinating. And then that was before algorithms. That was before there was pay to play, all of that. And it was so glorious. And now you're right. It has changed, as things do. Some would say for the better. Others would say not for the better.
Yeah.
But we bailed on Twitter.
Really? Okay.
Yes. Not me personally. I still have a strong presence on Twitter, but the church, because it just wasn't doing anything. And we found that Facebook and then certainly Instagram was far better for the church. Why is that? Why do churches find Instagram and Facebook as kind of the main social media channels?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with how each platform works and how people use it. Facebook, if you're going to be on one platform, even though I am not active on Facebook, I'm going to say be active on Facebook, because Facebook is where you have the largest amount of people across all demographics, all ages, all genders, all the things. So the other thing you can do with Facebook is you can do geo-targeting with, if you're doing paid ads on all of the platforms, but with Facebook, it's easier to connect with people based on location. So also with Facebook, you can do Facebook groups. So as an example, I was our volunteer director of communications at our church when it first started for about 2 years. And what we did have a Facebook page, but we also had a Facebook group just for our members. And that was like the hub. So if you were a member of our church, and if you were volunteering with our church, which you could not volunteer unless you were a member, which is another podcast for another day. I like that. But that was where we could easily communicate with people who were already in our ecosystem. And then having the public Facebook page it just makes sense to be on Facebook because it's where people are. Instagram is a really good one because when you think through church communications, you kind of need two things. You need to be able to get in front of people. So that's more so awareness, get people's attention, but you also need to help people understand who your church is. You want to be able to share the story, the heart of your church, what you're about, who you're for, all that stuff. And Instagram is really good for that because you can do really good storytelling on Instagram. So Instagram might not be a good place for you to announce what's coming. Hey, sign up here, come to this, do that. It's a really great tool to use on the back end of things. So maybe you have a baptism Sunday. Well, on Sunday, you might be grabbing content, video, all of those things. And then throughout the week following is when you can tell the story of all those baptisms.
That makes
so you don't need to be on everything.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's similar to what we do at Wes Bradenton. Thank you, Wes. Wes is our communications person at Wes Bradenton. He also produces this podcast. So I know he'll be listening. Yes, I know he'll be listening.
Good job,
to
Wes.
You. Alana and Wes are our two producers. We're very glad to have them both. Let's talk about this messaging calendar, because I know this is one of your specialties. So we've talked about a method of communication, at least social media, not the only method. We use a newsletter as well, among many other touch points. Walk me through your calendar, because I think this is something that would interest a lot of pastors and also provide us a way that, like, hey, we can reach out to you if there's some listeners out there like Julie could definitely help me. So what is this messaging calendar? It sounds so fascinating to me.
I know, it's really simple. And I realize when I say that, it feels really simple to me because I've been doing this for 15 plus years, but you do need a messaging calendar. And the reason why you need one is because a lot of church comms what they get wrong is that they start with the output first, or they start with the asset first. So they might have a videographer or a photographer, and they get the output, which is a really cool story, or a really cool video, a really cool picture. And they think that's our message. That's what we're trying to say. And in reality, you need to start with the message first. So what I do when I work with clients, whether it's a church client or a nonprofit, is I'm going to back it up a little bit. I first help them build a strategic calendar. You'd be surprised how many churches and nonprofits have no strategic plan and no strategic calendar for how they're going to get where they're trying to go. So you should do that first, but that's another conversation for another day. The next thing you can do as a communicator, or if you're a pastor who maybe you're the only staff, or maybe you're a pastor and one admin, this is something you can do. So a messaging calendar is something you should do for the whole year. So we're recording this in September. I think it goes live in October. This is actually great. No matter when you're listening to this, this is a great time this fall, 2025, to start planning for 2026. But it really can be done anytime. So what you do is you can do this on a doc, and I will have this as a free template. We can drop it in the show notes. You go month by month by month by month. So you list out January, February, March, April. That's kind of in one column. And then in the middle column, you're going to have what are all of our key priorities and events. So the thing that I think is interesting about church comms, for example, Easter comes every year. Every year Easter comes. And I believe this year,
surprise.
I think next year, I know, Jesus comes back and Easter comes every year. I believe in 2026, I think it's April 5th, which would put Good Friday, April 3rd. Someone can fact check that for me. And then the other, Christmas comes every year. Students go back to school every August and September. Every summer there's camps, there's missions trips. Most churches have rhythms that are the same every single year. VBS, that's another thing that happens. So the reason you're going to start with month by month by month on this messaging calendar is so that you can look at the whole year and say, what is coming? So if you know Easter is coming in April, in January, you can be thinking through your messaging calendar, which is where you say, what do I want to say as a church? So for example, I was working with the church this spring, coaching their comms people. And I do mostly work with churches who have a full-time comms person. But again, this is something you can do if you're just a team of one. So when I was working with her, they knew they were doing a sermon series on Acts. And it started, I think, in August. So when she and I worked on it, we said, hey, your message for August should be, you are sent. And I do want to give a little caveat here. Comms should never determine the sermon series. Comms should flow back from the sermon series. The pastor, the elders, they should determine what you are saying from the pulpit. So let me just put that caveat on there in case anyone is confused. So they already knew they were going to be talking about Acts throughout the fall. So we mapped out August, September, October, November, one message for each month that tied into Acts. So in August, that message was, you are sent. Now, one of the events and the priorities that they had as a church was in August, they did a teacher commissioning service. So that meant they brought teachers up on stage, whether it was private school, whether it was public school. I think they even did homeschool parents. They brought them up or they had them stand up and they prayed for them and they had a commissioning. So instead of just saying, hey, let's celebrate teachers, their message was a reminder to everyone, you are sent. Just like these teachers are sent to go teach these students, no matter what school they're in, you banker, you pharmacist, what are you doing? Because you have been sent as a Christ follower. So as they talked through these different things, whether it was like a youth launch or the teacher commissioning, they talked about it through the lens of that one message, you are sent. So again, go back to the messaging calendar. You map out your months, you map out all of your events and priorities, and then that third column would have the message that you have for each month. So then the reason that makes that easier is because if you're planning social media or planning your email, you don't sit down and go, what do we need to say? Because a lot of times churches get stuck going, we got to tell people about the volunteer sign up. We got to tell people about the youth trip coming up. You do need to tell them about that, but it's going to be much more compelling and it's going to land with them if it's tied to one specific message. And a lot of churches and nonprofits get this wrong is they give too many messages to their audience at once. So one message per month, and you tie everything your church is doing into that one message. It's actually easier than you think. So that's the messaging calendar.
Oh, I love that. And so if you're interested in learning more about this messaging calendar, how do people get a hold of you?
Yes, I will have that ready. It's almost done. I use it all the time, but I'm tweaking it for churches. It'll be at juliemasson.com/churchcomms.
All right. So link in the show notes for all of you who are interested in this messaging / strategy for your church. And you say comms, like it's just like you sound such like an expert. Like I ain't got time. I ain't got time for communications and all those syllables. Just comms. I'm just going to call it comms. Yeah. For those of our listeners who are like, what's she talking about? Yeah, communications.
Sam is actually a good communicator. The fact that he noticed, some people might not know that. We need to clarify. That's what a good communicator does.
I'm just picking at you. I think most of our listeners picked up on it. So we talk strategy. We talk calendar, which is scheduling. Mm-hmm. Let's talk personnel now. So there are probably people who are listening to this going, it would be so awesome if I had someone, even if it was just one, because we're talking about the one person church communication plan, because this is the vast majority of churches, right?
Yep.
I have one at my church, and we're a larger church. We got one, and he's part-time. Mm-hmm. He's very part-time. A lot of times this falls on the lead pastor or maybe an administrator or maybe like an associate pastor. So let's talk personnel. Sure. So the person who's listening to this going, yes, I know I need a calendar. I know I need a strategy. I just don't have somebody to do that. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I would say there's probably someone in your church who is skilled at communications and or marketing, which marketing usually sits under comms. And they might very well be willing to help you. And that could be how they serve your church. So everyone knows at every church, any good church is going to encourage all members to serve and get engaged. If you're active in your local church, you should be giving to your church. You should be serving at your church. So everyone knows you can serve in kids, you can serve hospitality, you can, serve in safety in the parking lot, all that stuff. This is a unique way where you could ask someone, hey, this is the way you can serve. And I'm not saying position it like this, say you don't have to serve on Sundays. I'm not saying that, but this is how I uniquely served my church when our church was first started. So our church is 10 plus years old now. And when it first started, I was our volunteer director of communications, and I worked about 10 hours per week. And I had flexibility in my life then. I was a mom of young kids. I loved doing it. And I was able to serve my church in that way. And whereas other seasons I might not have. So you probably have someone in your church who is skilled and has the capacity. And what you need is to frame up the request. So make it really specific. Don't just say, hey, can someone help us with marketing? Well, it's not really marketing per se that you need. Don't just say, hey, we need help with communications, because sometimes what will happen is a videographer or a photographer might say, I can tell really good stories with video. That's not what you're looking for. You're really looking for someone who has experience in email marketing, email communication, social media management. Those are the two main things. If a church can have someone help with email and social media in a volunteer capacity, that is huge. I also would say if you've got someone, I was a young mom who's a stay-at-home mom, but was skilled in communications. If you could put even $500 towards a role, I know that might be too much for some churches, but if you were to put like $500, $1,000 a month to someone who maybe they're not able to work outside of the home, but they've got a skill set, they have something to give, that's another way you could do it. But for sure, you likely have someone in your church who could serve this way. You just need to position it in such a way where they understand this is how I can give to my church. I have a job description, a volunteer communications manager job description on my website, and you're welcome to use that. We'll put that in the show notes. And that, because I think a lot of times we ask people for help, but we're not very clear on what exactly we want them to help with. So then there's misalignment and there's frustration. And so if you build out the messaging calendar for them and they know they're responsible for social media and email, that could go a long way and really save you some time.
So we're talking with Julie Masson, the church communications guru, giving us good advice. You can check her out at her website, juliemasson.com. Link in the show notes for that. She's got all sorts of great stuff there. I know you do a lot of work with nonprofits as well. So if we have anyone listening going, ooh, boy, this would be great for my nonprofit. I know that's also an area of expertise for you.
Yep.
I want to talk, and just with the time that's left, got a couple more questions. Let's talk the difference between social media and newsletter. And by newsletter, yes, I mean email newsletter. Mm-hmm. There are still some churches out there that are snail mailing their newsletters.
Wow, really?
Good for you if you're doing that. Okay. You'd probably save a lot of time and money if you switched over to email. We've been building our email list at the church for quite some time through our newsletter. We do a Monday devotional that's attached to the sermon. So it's all about what's coming up Sunday. That's the Monday devotional. I write it. I'm a writer, so that's easy for me. I know that's not for everyone, but if you're writing a sermon, it's usually not too hard to do a 400, 500 word devotional attached to it. So that gets people primed for Sunday. And then we do a Thursday, kind of here's what's happening in the life of the church. Click these links if you want to sign up for whatever. But how is that different than social media? Because I know we don't put everything that's in the newsletter does not go on social media. And so we're always encouraging people, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, or Threads. We kind of dabble in Threads a little bit, but it's kind of empty space out there right now. But if you really want to know what's going on, subscribe to the newsletter. So is that the right approach? Is that what you recommend for churches?
You want to see social media as a place, for lack of better words, to get discovered. So social media is where people are going to learn about your church. And then if they're intrigued, they're going to go to your website, which is like the front door of your church. So I'm going to give you an example of a church client I worked with this past spring. I was coaching their comms person, their comms coordinator. Really good leadership team. And like a lot of leaders, they were comparing what other churches were doing and saying, on social media. So they saw other churches' Instagram posts, other churches' Facebook strategies, and they said to their coordinator, hey, can you do that? Let's just do that. Well, I had her do an audit, which is where she goes and actually pulls the analytics from her email, from her social accounts and the website views. And then I had her do interviews with people in her church and ask them how they were getting information about the church. And it turns out that social media was actually a really bad place to engage with members of the church. And so once she did that, and once she built the messaging calendar with her leadership, it was like this mutual trust where they were able to go, oh, social media is not the place where, oh my gosh, we have something we need to tell our people. Let's get it out on social. Social media is not your silver bullet. It's actually the worst bullet if you're trying to get people's attention about something you need them to do. So she pivoted, and then she started using social media purely as a storytelling. So after events, after baptisms, it's not that she never used it for here's what's coming up. Stories on Instagram are really good for more of like, hey, here's what's happening, sign up. But in terms of overall Instagram and Facebook, it was much better storytelling. So social media is good for getting people's attention to discover you and know who you are. Email is still the best ROI when it comes to all channels, because email is where people know they're going to get it every month. And I like that you do a Monday and a Thursday because your people get used to that. And you do need to be consistent. Our church, we get an email every Wednesday. And in that email, it's here's what not the message, but here's the sermon, like what passage we're going to be studying. I think sometimes it lists the songs we're going to be singing, but then it also lists boom, 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 men's ministry, women's ministry, kids. Like that's where we can go to get information about what's happening in the church. Email is it's a platform you can control. Social media is not. You can lose your reach. You can lose your page. So email is much better for communicating internally with your own members and volunteers. Social media is better for communicating with people who have not yet discovered your church.
That's good stuff. So last question, texting. We use some software to communicate with our people for more urgent matters or as reminders. Yes. So when we had to cancel church because a literal hurricane was hitting, most people have common sense and they would say, wow, a Cat 4 hurricane it's a direct hit. Don't go to church.
Sure.
But right. we know there's somebody that's still going to get, so we sent an all church text to people to say, here's what's happening. Click the link if you want more information.
Yes.
So we were communicating in urgent matters that way. And then we do segmentation in our texting system. You have a council meeting, you have a stewardship committee meeting, and it only goes to those individuals about 5-6 hours prior to the meeting to remind them that they are to go to the meeting. The great thing about that system is we have like a 98% open rate on texts.
Yes.
We have like a 65% open rate on email.
That's actually good for email. So good job.
Yeah, it is. We put out quality content, Julie. Of course they want to read what I have to write. So we use text, but if you overuse text, it becomes incredibly annoying. So you don't want to communicate everything through text.
No.
Church Teams has a great software program. There are others out there. What do you suggest about texting? Are we on or off with our approach?
You guys are basically A++. If you're in the honor system, that's how I would grade your church with communications. No, seriously, use
Don't
texting.
Judge the preaching. I won't get an A++.
Oh, that's funny. Texting is really good for those urgent, we need people to know something now. So if email is, when you think about like a marketing funnel, and this analogy doesn't quite work, but if your top of your funnel is your social media, that's where you're creating awareness about your church, where it is, who it's for, what they're about, so that people can self-select. Ooh, I think that's a church that I want to be a part of. I want to grow my walk with God through that church. Okay. So then they maybe join. It depends on how your church is set up. A lot of churches have membership. So then once you're a member, then your main point of contact communication with the church is going to be email. And it could be monthly newsletters. I often recommend like a quarterly pastoral update, something like that. Churches do it differently. But then the text should be definitely reserved. That would be like very rarely. And it would be like those situations, kind of crisis situations. So a church I was working with this spring, and who I'm working with now, actually, they had a snowstorm that came like Saturday night late. And so, of course, churches, Sunday morning.
We had one of those once here in Southwest Florida.
Oh, snow?
No, I'm joking.
It's you remember I'm gullible.
I don't think it's ever snowed in Bradenton. Maybe once in 100 years.
Okay, but you do have the hurricane, so it works. But if they get a snowstorm, and honestly, it might have even come overnight, it would be unwise of them to post something on social and then think that that's all they need to do. Now, they did post on social, they did send an email, and they did send a text. All of those things were good to do. The text one, though, was the one that is going to get people's attention because they needed their attention now. You don't want to use text for awareness. You want to use text for, we need you to do X now, or we need you to be aware of something now. So I would not use text for any kind of weekly rhythm. So for example, at my school district, which they're doing a great job of communications, but new this year, we get a text every time a newsletter goes out. And I got to be honest, now and I have 3 kids in our school district. Now I'm getting 3 texts every week with a newsletter. And guess what? I'm not paying attention. Now I will look for it in my email, but I'm not going to look for the text. So yeah, use text for those last minute urgent, you need to know this now because your meeting's coming up. I like the way that you guys use that for segmented lists. That's good.
So there you go. Julie Masson, the church communications expert. Reach out to her at her website, juliemasson.com. You can over communicate. Yes, this is for you, local Christian school, of which all 4 of my children belong, as well as my wife, who is a teacher. Both, I get the elementary school emails and texts. I get the middle school emails and texts. I get the high school emails and texts. And then all of the classroom specific emails and texts.
Yes.
Guess what? I haven't read anything in the last 24 months. I have literally read nothing that the school has sent out because they have over communicated with me. It would be a full-time job to keep up with every word that they send out. And guess what? My children are still enrolled. I don't know how because I have no idea what's going on there. So to all of you churches who are like, we'll just send tons of messages out. Yeah,
do not do that.
You don't want to do that either. People will tune you out. And let me tell you, you don't want to tune out Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, sponsor of today's episode. We're very grateful for all that they do, particularly their Doctor of Ministry. It's designed to strengthen you and your church. I love the D-Min program because it's all about real life challenges in ministry. They've got trusted faculty. They've got a mentorship program. It's applied theological study. You cannot go wrong with the Southern Seminary D-Min. Go to sbts.edu/D-Min. That link is in the show notes. This degree is the one that you want to pursue, not only because they sponsor the show, although we're very grateful for that, because Southern's one of the preeminent institutions, theological institutions in the world. So sbts.edu/dmin is where you can go to learn more. I want to thank Julie Masson again for being on today's episode. We've got a lot more coming, as we always do. Check us out at churchanswers.com. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Our growing YouTube audience, we're very, very grateful to you. So thank you for watching, for listening. We'll see you next time.